So a lot of people talk about validation in relationships, and a lot of people feel like they validate their partner pretty well. Do you think you know how to validate your partner's feelings? Let's test that. In the next few minutes, we're going to explore the 3 common mistakes people make when trying to validate their partner's emotions. Then, I'm going to share a 7-step method that's going to help you validate effectively every single time. So imagine this, your partner comes home upset about something that happened at work. You immediately start suggesting solutions, thinking that you're being helpful. But instead of feeling better, your partner seems even more frustrated. Does that sound familiar? This exact situation happens way more often than not, and it reveals a common misunderstanding about what validation is. So a lot of people think that they're validating their partner's feelings when they're actually missing the point entirely. Proper validation is essential for avoiding emotional discords and building intimacy in relationships. It is the absolute core element of healthy communication. So if you're ready to improve your validation skills, I'm going to dive into the 3 main validation mistakes and the 7-step method to truly connect with your partner's emotions. So let's talk about a tough truth. Instead of bringing your partner closer to you, your attempts to support them might be pushing them away even further, and it could even be toxic. So here are the 3 common mistakes that sabotage your relationship. The biggest mistake people make when it comes to validation is confusing validation with agreement. So a lot of people think that to validate your partner's feelings, you need to agree with their perspective. But validation isn't about agreeing. It's about acknowledging their perspective. So for example, if your partner is frustrated with their boss, you don't need to agree that their boss is unfair. You just need to recognize that their feelings of frustration are valid from their point of view. The second biggest mistake is surface level validation. So some people think that simply saying your feelings are valid is validation. But unfortunately, this is very surface level validation. This surface level validation is very quick, generic responses. So for example, saying something like, that sucks, or I'm sorry you feel that way. This may feel like it's being supportive, but it really fails to address the deeper emotions that your partner is feeling. It's kind of like putting a band-aid on a wound that needs stitches. This is a very superficial approach and actually leaves your partner feeling really unheard and misunderstood, even though you're trying to validate their feelings. You're trying to do the exact opposite. This creates a bigger gap between you both and what myself and my members call emotional discord. The next biggest mistake is accidental invalidation. So accidental invalidation occurs when our responses, despite our good intentions, end up dismissing or criticizing our partner's feelings. So phrases like, don't be so sensitive, or you're overreacting. This can make your partner feel like their emotions just aren't justified. And this is a kind of invalidation, can lead to emotional isolation, and it damages your partner's self-esteem over time. And this destroys emotional safety. And emotional safety is the environment to be able to share your feelings. So it's really crucial to understand that failing to validate your partner properly can have real serious consequences. As human beings, when we feel that our emotions aren't understood or accepted, we start suppressing them or withdrawing from the people who are invalidating them. And this leads to a lot of feelings of loneliness and emotional distance within the relationship. You know, one of the biggest barriers to effective validation is our tendency to focus on positivity. So yes, it's okay to be optimistic, but constantly seeking the silver lining can lead to ignoring or minimizing negative emotions that your partner's feeling. So when your partner is in pain, in a bad mood, they need understanding, not a forced positive spin. And this specifically is what my members and I call the paradox of control, where you're trying to control somebody's feelings in the moment, but actually what you end up doing is invalidating them. So by avoiding these mistakes, you can significantly improve your relationship dynamics and your validation skills. Proper validation fosters a safe space for emotions, it strengthens intimacy, and it builds a much stronger connection. So now that we've discussed what validation isn't, let's talk about what it truly is. Validation isn't about agreeing or even fully understanding someone's situation. It's about acknowledging that their feelings are understandable based on their unique experience. So at its core, validation involves sending a clear message that someone's feelings are valid given their circumstances. And what this does is this gives a psychological support, and it has a huge impact on emotional well-being and the strength of your relationship. Being able to validate your partner's emotions creates a safe space for them, what we call emotional safety, for them to express themselves. And this leads to an increased emotional security and reduced emotional pain. It shows them that they're not alone in their feelings, that you're able to share them whilst not fully feeling them in that moment. You know, human beings crave connection and understanding. This is a part of our core. And when emotions are validated, it satisfies this deep need. It tells us that our experiences matter, that we are seen and that we are heard. And this strengthens the bond between us and our partners, and it deepens intimacy. And a lot of us think that we're really good at listening, but validation is more than just listening. It's about being able to take the time to understand and process your partner's emotions alongside them. And there's a 7-step method that can dramatically improve your ability to connect. So it's simple, but it's powerful enough to change your relationship dynamic. And just before I jump into these 7 steps, if you do want more videos like this on relationships, communication, and even ADHD, then feel free to subscribe to my channel for new videos every single week. The first step is to simply be present and listen. And this may seem really obvious, but it's really crucial. Focusing on more than just hearing words and giving your full attention and using your appropriate body language. So when your partner's speaking, putting away distractions, making eye contact, and showing that you're fully engaged in what they're saying. Step 2 is using affirmative responses. So this is simply small acknowledgements like nodding or saying, tell me more, can encourage your partner to share more openly. And these gestures show that you're actively engaged in the conversation. Step 3 is to reflect on what they've said. So this is where you validate their feelings without judgment by reflecting back what they're saying. So you can paraphrase the core of what they're saying, or simply using validating statements like, that makes sense based on what you've been through. For even deeper validation, you can even relate it to the context of their experience. So for example, let's say your partner has been through a tough time in work, but this is the 7th job that they've had a tough time in. You can say something along the lines of, hey, I can really understand what you're going through right now. You've really had a tough time in jobs over the past few years, and this just feels like the icing on the cake. It must feel really exhausting. This shows that you're understanding the emotions behind their words. Step 4 is to briefly share your personal experiences. So sharing your personal experiences can help relate to your partner's feelings. So this can be quite dangerous if you overshadow their experience. So it's more about showing empathy, not making it about you. So simply saying, I think I felt a similar way when I went through all of my career stuff, a couple of years ago, and it's a really tough call. Briefly showing that you've kind of been through a similar thing, not only increases your credibility in what you're saying, but it also shows a bit more understanding in what your partner's going through. And just before I jump into the next step, the 7-step method is part of a much larger toolkit for creating deeper emotional connections and being able to overcome logical and emotional discords that happen in relationships. And this is exactly what I work on with all of my ultra normal members. And if you want to take the first steps on your journey to turning your relationship around, then join me on my free relationship bootcamp, where you'll learn the same tools and steps that all of my members have used to start turning their relationships around. Simply click on the link in the description to grab your spot. Step 5 is to encourage further sharing. So simply inviting your partner to explore their feelings more, showing that you genuinely want to understand their perspective. So for example, using language like, hey, you said you felt angry, like tell me a little bit more about that. This encourages your partner to open up a little bit more and shows that you're interested to understand their perspective. Step 6 is to ask supportive questions. So very clear questions like, what do you need right now? Or how can I best support you? This shows that you care about what they're going through without assuming that they need something fixed. And this applies especially to us guys here, where you can jump into fixer mode quite easily, but oftentimes it's simply more about listening and understanding rather than offering solutions. So this demonstrates that you're actively seeking ways to be there in the way that your partner wants. And step 7 is to address your role if necessary. So if you played a part in the situation, acknowledge it. Recognize how your actions may have affected your partner and show that you're willing to be part of that solution. By taking the responsibility for the role that you had, helps to build that trust with your partner and helps to validate on a deeper level. It shows that you understand that you were part of this situation that has impacted their feelings. But it's important to understand that validation is a skill that improves with practice. These are the skills that I work on with all of my ultra normal members, because it's not just about conceptually knowing things, it's about being able to practice and develop these skills in a deep way. The more that you learn this and build on this, the more natural it's going to become. And by getting into the habit of validating your partner's emotions, you're actually rewiring your own brain in order to make this your default. And this is really helpful for fellow ADHDers, being able to rewire your brain to make this a habit and make it stick in your brain. And by following these steps, you're showing your partner that their feelings matter and that you're there to support them. But it's really important to understand that validation by itself is not sufficient enough to create emotional safety within a relationship. It's part of a much larger relationship toolkit. And in order to build this toolkit, it's important to understand what emotional safety is and how it works. So I've actually done a deeper dive on emotional safety here, but ultimately, emotional safety is not just about saying the right things. It's also about the way that you respond in every scenario. It's about your emotional regulation. It's about your communication skills. It's about what you do day in, day out in order to create an emotionally safe space for your partner to be able to express themselves. So I'll leave you with that video, and I'll see you over there.